that is the recording now on. So let's get started. So for those who haven't met me before, my name is Julie Cullen and I'm a career coach who specialises in helping people build their confidence. And in particular, a lot of the work that I do is around speaking more confidently, which we're going to talk about today. And what you're going to get today is 2 techniques that you can use that will allow you to instantly sound more confident when you speak. Now, you may not feel immediately confident on the inside, and we'll talk about that, but you'll definitely sound more confident if you apply these techniques. And over time, the more you use them, the more confident you will become. So first of all, to get the most out of today's workshop, I want you to think about a very specific situation in which you don't feel comfortable speaking up. So a situation in which you feel like nobody really listens when you speak up, or maybe they don't value your opinion, or just you find it hard to get it across. So what I'd like to invite you to do, if you're comfortable with it, is to share that in the comments. What is that situation in which you would like to confidently share your opinions and your ideas and feel that people actually listen? And so what I want you to do is, once you've identified that situation, I want you to keep that in mind as we're going through today's workshop. Okay, and as you're learning these techniques, I want you to imagine the difference it would make in those situations if you were to start speaking more confidently using the techniques that I'm going to share. Okay, so while you're sharing yours in the comments, I'm going to share one of mine. So for me, one of the biggest challenges was, and to be honest, still is to some extent, speaking up in front of people of influence, people I admire, people I respect. You know, I remember one time I used to work in a global corporation and I was going for a promotion and I was really, really nervous. It was an important promotion for me, but there was 2 major stumbling blocks that I had. The first was I didn't really believe I deserved the promotion. And I'm sure some of that will resonate with some of you already. You don't think you believe, or you don't believe that you deserve it. I didn't believe I was good enough. I'm going to talk a little bit about beliefs today. And the second was my fear of speaking in front of that particular audience. Okay, so that is one of my challenges, is that they were senior executives in our organization. And half of them didn't know who I was very well. In fact, to be honest, that was a big mistake on my part going into the presentation, because I should have built those relationships first. And that's something that I talk about in my building relationships and influence training. But for me, in that moment, I hadn't done my background. I hadn't made those relationships. So quite a few of these people were not well known to me. And I remember walking into the room and the tables were all set out in a semicircle, all facing the presentation stage. And as I walked in, I could just feel all their eyes staring at me, because there was loads of us doing presentations that day. When I walked in for my turn, they were all just staring at me as I'm setting up my laptop and getting my presentation ready. And a few friendlies in the room, because there were 1 or 2 people I did know, tried chatting with me to help calm my nerves. But it really wasn't working, to be honest with you. I could feel my whole body was shaking. I was sure they must have been able to see it. My stomach was turning in knots, and I could feel my throat start to dry up, and I hadn't even started speaking yet. And then the person who I was most nervous speaking in front of wanders into the room late. He doesn't sit behind a desk. No, he just pulls up a chair right down at the front and sits down. And he leans back in his chair with his legs stretched out in front of him, crossed over. His arms were crossed in front of his chest like this. And he had this almost arrogant, let's see what you've got look on his face. Honestly, it was so intimidating. I don't know if he does it intentionally to everyone or if it was just me, but it felt very, very intimidating. And in my mind, I was just sure that he didn't believe I should be there. And he was just waiting to prove it. I would love to end this story by telling you what an amazing presentation I delivered, but I didn't, right? It was a train wreck. It was so bad. The feedback that I got was that I did earn the promotion, so I got the promotion, but the feedback was that I got it in spite of the presentation. not because of it. It was so bad. And it was a long time before I got back on a stage again. But now, I mean, it's part of what I do for my business, and I absolutely love it. I get up on stage at live events. I love coming in front of audience like yourself and sharing stories and teaching you skills. So you can get over it. And I'm going to talk about that today. But let's just check and see who's sharing what their examples are. So Mitesh, in a meeting at work where people are listening and really taking my comments on board. Yeah, it's so frustrating if you feel you're talking and nobody's actually listening. They're checking their mobile phones. And I did touch on that today. Alexia giving presentations, as I just shared, not my strong suit back in the day. Gabrielle, in my work, I often get talked over in my peer group, and often my ideas and experience is dismissed as I'm part of a smaller business that merged with a larger business. Yeah, and that is so frustrating. Hopefully, some of the tips that you can take today will help you be able to deliver your message in a way that doesn't allow people to talk over the top of you. To be honest with you, it is a bit rude. And one of the things is about learning to have belief in yourself and the confidence to actually challenge them when they do talk over you. But I've been in that room where, yeah, you make a suggestion, you're the newbie in the room, you make a suggestion and everybody says, oh, no point in doing that, we've tried that before, and all those kind of negativity. Really, really bad feedback. If you're ever in a meeting and you see that happening to somebody, please try and help, step in if you can, because it's really awful. Sylvia at meetings with senior professionals and in public. Yep, so as I shared, yep, senior professionals. Tara, meeting with senior management. Tamara, director level chats. Yep, and the PEP framework should help a little bit with that, because sometimes director chats we tend to waffle, and I'm going to teach you how to keep your message on point. And Teresa, in an interview and in front of management. Yeah, so situations that make us feel nervous, or actually, I would say not make us feel nervous, situations in which we become nervous. And we'll talk a little bit more about that when we're talking about beliefs. Okay, so thank you very much for all that great input, and welcome to the people who just come in from the chat room. So unfortunately, there are times when it feels difficult to speak up. But the fact that you're here today proves that you're willing to take steps to be heard and to take ownership of it. And I want you to acknowledge yourself for that, because that's actually quite important. Too often, I hear people complain that, oh, she doesn't listen to me. They're never interested in what I have to say. Nobody pays attention to my suggestions. And they put the blame outside of themselves, right? And occasionally it will be the other person that's causing it. But it's how you respond to that that's the big difference. So you're here because you consider that maybe there's something you can do, because they're not considering there's something they can do. They're just blaming everyone else. You're choosing to take ownership of the problem to see if you can fix it. Okay, and by the end of today, you will have some strategies for fixing it and certainly improving it. Okay, so I want you to acknowledge yourself for taking this step and taking the time to spend on your own personal development, which I love. As a career coach, I always recommend everyone should do at least 1 hour's personal development every week. So the fact that you're here today is great. So the next thing I want you to talk about in the chat is how it makes you feel in that situation that you mentioned. So I've shared with you what was happening in my mind and body. I mean, I was going into meltdown on my presentation before I even spoke. But think about what happens in your mind and in your body when you feel you're not able to talk as confidently as you would like, and drop it in the chat bar. And what we're going to do is you're going to learn a couple of techniques today that you can apply that will make you sound more confident when you speak. And once you've learned these, you need to have the belief in yourself and the willingness to go out there and practice them. Okay, that is so important, taking action. You know, I could have let my experience in my presentation put me off for life. I could have avoided delivering presentations or giving training. But then I wouldn't be having the pleasure of doing what I'm doing today. I absolutely love it. I love getting up on stage now. I chose to learn from my experience. I've developed the skills and I've gotten the training and the coaching that I needed to grow my confidence, grow my communication, and grow my presentation skills. And that's basically why I'm in business, to help you do the same. I want you to enjoy what you do rather than feel frustrated, embarrassed, and filled with self-doubt. I want to equip you with the tools and techniques to help you avoid those feelings. Okay, so let's take a look at some of the fields. I see people typing away here, so let me see. Rachel, I feel anxious and nervous. Yeah. Tamara, frustrated at not showing myself off in the way I know I'm capable of. Yeah, isn't that so annoying? Because you know you can do it. You know you can do better. It is just about learning those techniques and getting over that hurdle. Tara, do I really know the product we're talking about? Okay, so the lack of confidence to reinforce your knowledge. And that's important because it's that second guessing of ourselves. It's really frustrating. So it's trying to have that belief in what you say and how you say it. Annalie, you feel demoted. Sorry, the screen just moved there. You feel demotivated and want to leave. Wow, right? How powerful is that? That something can have such a powerful impact on you and make you feel like that. So I want to give you some tools and techniques that you can apply to help you go over that. Sylvia, I get very nervous. I start sweating and concerned. People think I don't know what I'm saying. Yeah. Okay. So what I love here is, do you notice what you're sharing, folks? We all have similar feelings. And I promise you, there are people who stand up on stage at huge events, and I mean talking in front of hundreds and thousands of people who have gone through the process as well, who you wouldn't believe were nervous when they spoke up on stage because they were already speakers in your mind. But they have to go through that process as well. They have to get through the training, the ability, the growing and the learning, and that's what you're going to do today. Okay, so what I want you to think about, so you've got the situation, you've got how it makes you feel at the moment. So I want you to think about how you would feel if you did have more confidence in the situation. So roll forward, you've had the training, you've had the coaching, you've moved forward, you're applying what you've learned. How's that going to make you feel in those situations? Share it in the comments. Use that as your motivation and your inspiration to take action. So that today, at the end of the hour, you're not just going to go back to your office or back to your desk and carry on behaving the way you did before. You're going to actually use what you've learned and start applying it in the workplace. So inspire yourself, get it in the comments. How would it feel to confidently speak in those situations you've just identified? Okay, so let's get into techniques. Now, the first one, if you're a regular listener of mine, you will have heard this one before. I talk about it a lot. I don't apologize for repeating myself. It is one of the quickest ways that you can change from going to not being listened to being listened to, and it's all about the language you use. So think about, you're in a meeting, having a conversation with someone, okay? And you or someone in the room starts with, this may be a stupid question, but, or maybe you want to put forward a proposal and you start by saying, I'm not sure this will work, but what about, this is called weak language. This language makes you sound unsure of yourself and your thoughts and their opinions. So if you think people aren't listening to you and you think people are talking over the top of you, is there language that you're using that leads them to doubt what you're saying? Are you using that kind of weak language? If you want people to listen to you, you have to be able to speak confidently. If you want to influence other people, you have to go in strong. You have to have confidence in you and your opinions. And if you don't speak with authority and confidence, then how can they have a belief in you? So one of the things I want you to walk away from today is tuning into the language you use and understanding. Some of you may already know some of the language you use, it's already popping into your head. So stick it in the chat bar. What is the language that you use that you think, that does sound a little bit weak? I should stop saying that. And I'll give you some examples in a minute, but if it's popping into your mind, type it in now. Listening to the language you use in the workplace is so important. So you need to know, are you going in with 100% conviction and belief in what you're about to say? Or are you worried what other people might think? And so you play it down with words like perhaps, maybe, possibly, sorry, type in a few more if you can think of them, right? Speaking with influence and authority, getting your voice heard, means speaking with conviction, believing in yourself. I have a question, and just ask it. Don't preface it with it may be a stupid question. Just ask the question, right? If you have a thought or an idea, I propose that I'm going to share some thoughts. My recommendation is, how confident do those sound? Share your opinion in a confident and positive manner. Now, not everybody will agree with you. That's okay. You don't always agree with everybody either. But that doesn't mean to say your opinion isn't valuable. Everyone in the room has their opinion, and they won't always be in agreement with you. But by speaking with strong language, you'll have shown that you have a confidence and a belief in yourself to speak up, which will then lead to others in the room having belief and confidence in you. If you want your voice to be heard, remove the weak language from your vocabulary. So I can see a couple of examples coming in already. Emma, oh, no worries if you're not able to. Yeah. Tara, it's just a suggestion. Yeah. Mitesh, the examples you've given, you've used them. Yeah. E.g., I might have an idea. And it's not even just what you say, it tends to be the way you say it as well. And your body language as well. Think about your body language when you're using this language. Sylvia, I'm not sure this will work. Yeah. All things that just weaken what we're about to say and are totally unnecessary. Some other words, the word just devalues what you're about to say. Before I begin, I just have a few handouts for you. It kind of undermines the value of using handouts, isn't it? Or I'm just checking in to see. I just saw somebody type in, I just want to add. Yeah, you're using the word just. I just want you to know. So using the word just, we call that a minimizing word. And a lot of the time that it's used is not necessary. Remove it. Hear the difference. I have a few handouts for you. I'm checking in to see. I want to know. Right? Even just removing that one little word just makes you sound more confident and self-assured. Other phrases, I believe, I think, I feel. These sound like you're being very cautious about what you're about to say. Remove them or replace them. Start listening to the language you use and be more deliberate about what you say and replace them with powerful language. So some other examples of unnecessary words, we call them filler words. Sort of, pretty much, kind of, basically, actually, anyway. Can you hear it? You just hear how they don't sound confident if you use them right before you're about to say what you want to say. Why would people listen to you if you don't sound confident about what you're going to say? I once heard a newspaper editor say that every single word in a news article has to earn its place on the page. So newsprint space is very valuable. There's no space for unnecessary words, and editors are ruthless. So look at that. Next time, because this doesn't just apply to your verbal language, it also applies to your written language. So next time you create any written word, like a document or an article, or maybe you're writing out in preparation for a presentation what you're going to say, check how many times you use words unnecessarily. One to look out for straight away that many people, myself included, is to using the word that a lot in written documents. That. It was one of the ones the editor pointed out, and I must admit, I have to painstakingly remove umpteen times during my edits because I do habitually use it when writing content. But now that I'm aware of it, I immediately take it out. And the same with when I speak. So one of my filler words is so this, so that. And I'm sure if I watch this replay back, I'll have mentioned it a few times already. I try to be more self-aware of it and try to remove it from my language. And that's what you need to do as well, is bringing that awareness to what's going on. One more word, sorry. Did anybody type that one in? Sorry. Sorry, can you repeat that, please? I'm sorry, but I disagree. I'm not available this week. Sorry. Well, that constant apologizing right? A little bit like Emma, what you said, no worries if you're not able to. It's kind of the same idea, isn't it? Take the word sorry out. Just ask, can you repeat that? I disagree, and explain why you disagree. I'm not available this week. Don't apologise for being unavailable. Over-apologising is an unconscious habit. There are times when an apology is necessary, obviously, but don't use an apology just to deflect a negative reaction because you're worried how the other person might respond. Start editing your own language, right? Remove the unnecessary words. In fact, now that you're aware of it, you'll start to notice other people doing it as well. Tune in and think about how they sound with that language and how you think they would sound if they were to speak differently. Be more aware. That's coaching someone is a lot of it is about raising awareness to your behaviors and the patterns of behavior so that we can then change them. So the first step for you is raising that an awareness that you've already started doing in the chat about the language that you're using. Now the second step is to using that awareness, using that knowledge, applying what you've learned and changing the language you use. Okay. Before I go on to technique number 2 on how to deliver your message clearly and confidently using the PEP framework, I want you to take a moment to examine what currently stops you from speaking confidently. Excuse me. There is a reason why you tend to use weak language, and it will help if you can identify it. Before I go on to that, I've just seen a question in the chat, so I'm going to take a look at it. Tamara says, I would feel like my confidence respects me more if I use more powerful language. Absolutely. They would listen and respect what you say. Amelia, does this apply to end phrases such as please? If that is all right with you, thanks in advance. Yeah, Amelia. So again, politeness should not be disregarded, but don't use it in the context of weakening what you're saying, and don't do it as almost like you're apologizing for what you're saying. So the one like, if that's all right with you, is that appropriate to use in that situation? Is there a stronger way that you could ask the person to do it? Okay, so again, that does have a weakness sound to it. Again, it's about the context. So in the context of the sentence you use it, is there a more powerful way that you could have that conversation? Okay, but good, that they are definitely good examples. So we're talking about why you use language, like weak language. Because at the end of the day, the language you use is a behavior or a habit that you've gotten into because of what you believe will happen in that situation. So for many of you, it's because you're afraid of what other people will think when you speak or share your ideas. Or Amelia, if you're asking someone to do something and you're worried what the reaction might be, then that's the time when you don't really want to use it, if that's all right with you. If you need someone to do something, just ask them to do it or tell them to do it, whatever is the most appropriate. Yeah, I worked for a team leader and she used to do that all the time. If that's all right with you, you're the team leader, tell me what to do and I'll do it. That's your job, that's my job. It shouldn't really matter whether it's all right with me or not, if that's my job. So if you've got a behavior or a habit that's all about using weak language, it's usually to do with your fear of what other people think. So type a yes if that's you. If you know that you worry about what other people think, and that's why you tend to hide behind weak language. Because rather than confidently saying what you want to say, you'll soften it with weak words and phrases. It's a kind of mechanism for protecting yourself from negative opinion. It's the reason why in my 5 steps to greater confidence training, I combine both communication skills and confidence skills, because you need the belief and the confidence in yourself to be able to use the communication skills you learn. So that's why I do the 2 together. Used to do them separately, more powerful done together. And weak language is a habit you've adopted to try and protect yourself from other people's thoughts. So I've already said, become more aware of it and make an effort to stop it. It won't be easy all the time. Some of it you'll find quite easy to do, certain words or phrases. But usually, if you use it a lot, it's like any other bad habit. You need to break the cycle. You've been doing it for years and you need to learn to break that cycle like any other bad habit. And I've spent years teaching people how to change their habits and behaviors. And I see the frustration that occurs as they go through the transition. Think about any New Year's resolution when you set a habit that you wanted to change. You found it very challenging. It's because you have this habitual behavior that you're trying to change. And changing behavior and habits is not easy. Right? Most of us try to change the behavior without changing what we believe and how we think. And that makes habit change very difficult. Now think about it. If you're trying to adopt a new habit, such as, say, getting fitter, that's one most of us can resonate with at some point in our lifetime. New habit, you want to get fitter, but you believe going to the gym is boring, or you think of yourself as a lazy couch potato, then you're going to find it very tough to adopt that new habit. Changing behavior is very difficult if you don't first change the way you think. So you need a mindset shift. And once you have that, behavior change becomes more naturally. So these words that you're trying to eliminate, you'll be able to eliminate them more easily if you can change that way of thinking, change that, stop feeling that lack of confidence, feel and believe in yourself as a confident individual who deserves to have their voice heard. And by the way, this works not just for confidence, but for any habit or behavior you want to change. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to share a personal example. I'm going to go off topic at the moment, but I want to share an experience where I wanted to change a habit or behavior that was a personal one, not a work-related one. And while I'm sharing my story, I want you to think about a New Year's resolution or a habit that you tried to break and reflect on what you believed at the time and how that influenced the outcome. Whether it was a positive or negative outcome, how did that influence it? So I used to be a smoker. And for 10 years, I tried to quit. And for 10 years, I failed to quit. And then one year, back in 2014, I quit. Now, the technique that I used to quit the habit never, ever changed. I always used the same technique. But the year that I quit, the outcome did. So I used the same process and would get the patches, throw away the cigarettes in preparation, use a situation where I knew I wouldn't be smoking for a period of time. And then I'd get back to the office, get back to my routines, and very, very quickly, I would start feeling the draw of the habit. Because the habit for me, for smoking, a lot of it was to do with distractions, getting away from my desk. If I was stressed or bored, whatever different triggers I had, they started to pop back up again. And I started to react to them. And slowly but surely, I would start smoking again. And this repeated on a loop for 10 years. It was ridiculous. The year I quit, something was very different that year. And it wasn't to do with the technique that I used. I went through the same process of buying the patches, throwing away the cigarettes, the temptation, taking the break from the office and using that as the trigger to start. What was different that time was two things. One, my belief about smoking changed. And the second was how I felt about myself changed. So all of this was in here. I used to believe smoking was a cool thing to do, right? When you're young, other people smoke, you want to be part of the club. You become part of a social circle. That was my belief. It's cool, it's friendly, it's social to smoke. But the year I quit, I had a mindset shift. Instead of being something that I saw as social, it now became antisocial. I thought it was disgusting, it was smelly, it was something I no longer wanted to do. My belief about what it meant to be a smoker had changed. The second thing that changed was how I felt about me and my ability to quit. In all the times that I failed, I had identified myself as a smoker trying to quit. So even when the periods when I was off smoking, I'd quit for a couple of weeks, I would still identify myself as a smoker. I'm a smoker trying to quit. That's what I would say to people if they offered me a cigarette. I'm trying to quit. The year I actually quit, I didn't feel like a smoker anymore. I didn't want to be a smoker anymore. I became a non-smoker. I changed my identity from a smoker to a non-smoker. I'd only been a non-smoker for a day, but still, if people said to me, do you want a cigarette? I would say, I don't smoke. Subtle, but powerful. The biggest way to drive habitual change is to change the way you identify yourself, to change the way that you believe, you behave, you are in that situation. If you want to speak more confidently, you have to believe that you are a confident person and stop hiding behind things like weak language. So to change the habit, it's not just about physically changing it, it's about mentally changing how you see yourself and what you believe. Okay, that's what I do in my training and coaching, is I teach people how to change their habits and behaviors all around confidence by changing what's going on up here. It's so important, it's so powerful. If you don't change how you think and feel in that situation that you identified, where you feel that lack of confidence to speak up, then you may struggle to apply the techniques I'm sharing with you today. That's why I don't just teach techniques, I teach techniques and mindset change. Okay, so we're going to go on to technique 2, which is all about how you deliver your message. I'm going to do a quick check on the comments. Tamara, yes, I find myself, if you have the time, could you? Yeah, you need to do that. I need them to do the job. Yep, so you need to get stronger at saying, I need you to do this. Or I'm asking you to do this. I'm telling you to do this. I'm telling you to do this. Maybe it sounds a bit too strong. You have to think about what's appropriate in the context of the conversation and the audience. If it's a child, I'm telling you to do this, it works very well. Rachel, I also think that your voice tone matters. Absolutely. Talking abruptly and raising your voice unnecessarily. Yes. And funnily enough, in my communications training, we do talk a lot about how you deliver your message. And Sylvia, spot on. I became more aware of my weak language and bad habits on your course. Yes, so Sylvia is one of my students on the course, and I'm glad that resonated with you, Sylvia. So we've talking about the language, or spoken about the language, sorry. Now it's all about how you deliver what you're about to say. Okay, and I'm going to share a framework with you. Because one of the things that happens when you're uncertain or you're worried what other people think, you can find yourself rambling and struggling to get your point across. And that's when you notice that you lose your audience. People stop listening to what you have to say. Maybe they cut over the top of you, as was mentioned earlier, and interrupt you. And many times if you've been in a meeting, you notice people pick up their phones, they start messing about with their phones as they lose interest in what the speaker is saying. So if you want people to listen to you, if you want to get your voice heard, as well as improving the language that you use, think about how you deliver your message. Okay. When you speak, there's nothing worse than listening to someone droning on and on, using 100 words when 10 would have been enough, or listening to the speaker spend, and you see this a lot in presentations actually, they spend a lot of unnecessary time talking about the research they did, demonstrating all the effort they put in, how they came to their conclusion, when all the audience wants to know is the conclusion, not all the hard work and effort that you've put in. So today I'm sharing a technique called the PEP framework, which I discovered in a book called The A to Z of Being Understood by Kay White. And it's easier if you can visually see this when I'm speaking. So what I'm going to do now is I am going to share my screen. So type in the comments, yes, if you can now see a slide that says point, exclamation point, get to the point. Yes, thank you, Sylvia. Thank you, Maria. So what we are talking about here is the PEP framework. PEP, P-E-P, point, explanation, point. And in the explanation, you're given 3 reasons for your point, and I'll come on to that in a minute. So this gets your point across without spending too much time sharing needless information that people aren't interested in. So I'm going to start with a very simple example. And what I want you to do is I'm going to read it as if I was speaking it. And what I want you to do is just so you can see the breakdown, I've put it on this frame. So when you get your point across quickly and concisely, people will respect you for it. They'll understand where you're coming from. They'll get a sense of what they need to be thinking about, and you'll save precious time and energy. So it's really worth getting your point across quickly and concisely because people will respect you for it. Did you see how that worked? Very short way of getting a message across without rambling. So I'm going to give you a work-related example. So imagine your boss has asked you to review the software the company uses for its video conferencing and evaluate it against 3 other options on the market. You do your homework, you spent hours reviewing the options, and you have your recommendations ready to present. Now, at that meeting, what many people would do is go one by one through each of the options, sharing the pros and cons, and then at the end, 45 minutes later, make their recommendation. In the meantime, people have begun to switch off. They're checking their phones, or worse, I've heard this happen to someone, the manager interrupts and just asks you to skip the recommendation. Like, how embarrassing is that? Right? She was mortified, absolutely mortified. They're not interested in all the hard work you've done. That's your job. All they're interested in is the result, the recommendation. So by using the PEP framework, you can go in strong. Begin with your recommendation and a summary of the key reasons for that decision. Then invite questions or discussions. If they have any, they'll ask. If they don't, because they already know how good you are at what you do and trust that you've done your research, they might just accept your recommendation. It could be over and done within 10-15 minutes. Okay, so sharing this next slide then. This is how it might sound and what it looks like relative to the framework. We would say, I recommend we replace our existing software with conferencing software from company X. It has all the functionality we had listed as our must-have criteria, plus additional functionality that would enable us to deliver even better large-scale remote conferences to our global team. The look and feel of this software is very similar to the current platform, so there would be minimal training for our employees. And the licensing cost for this platform would give us an annual saving of 20% on our existing software. Therefore, my recommendation is that we replace our existing software with that option. And in fact, I've just noticed a weak word in there because I've put therefore in. We don't need therefore. My recommendation is that we replace our existing software with this option. So at this point, I would like to invite questions regarding my recommendation. And if you would like, I can go more into the research results with you if you'd like. Okay, does everyone see how that works? Does that make sense to anyone? Give me a little yes in the chat if that all made sense. Or if you've got any questions, type them in. The whole thing is about getting to the point. And the framework is a very, very good way of doing that. The point, the explanation, and the point. Thanks, guys, for letting me know that that made sense. Okay, so I'm going to stop the share for now. So you can use this anywhere, right? Written in an email, planning a phone call, a presentation, a speech. Get to the point. Use the PEP framework. If they need more information, be ready to deliver it. Have it as backup. But don't lead with it. Lead with the recommendation. And we've covered a lot in a short space of time. I can feel it in my throat. I need to go get myself a big glass of water. You've learned the importance of using strong language to get your voice heard. And I can't stress enough how big a difference this will make to the way you sound to other people. Ditch the weak language. Be aware of it, ditch it. You remove the unnecessary words, unnecessary phrases, and instantly sound more confident. People will be more inclined to listen to you when you sound confident in yourself and your ideas. The second is that you learn to use the PEP framework to get your point across quickly and effectively without rambling and without spending unnecessary time sharing information that people don't need. In actual fact, so it was point, 3 explanations, and point again. 3 is very specific number. 1 tends not to be enough. 6 could be verging on the too many. 3 is usually a nice number if you can stick to it. 4 at a push if you really need to, but try and keep it as brief as possible. And then thirdly, you now understand how your beliefs and thoughts are influencing your behaviour. The reason that you ramble, the reason you use weak language, the reason why you feel difficult speaking up is because of what's going on in your mind around your beliefs, your thoughts, and how you feel about yourself. That's all influencing your behaviour, and it's important to deal with what's going on there to help support you in creating the behaviour change. And I shared my example of how changing what was going on in here helped me finally kick the smoking habit. So don't just apply it in work, apply it in your personal life as well. Develop a confident way of thinking. So if you develop a confident way of thinking, you will behave in a much more confident manner. Thank you for joining today. Thank you for taking time to develop your own personal skills and techniques. And I hope to see many of you either on the course or one of my future workshops. You are all now on my email list, so you will get an email later today. If you have any questions that you haven't asked now that you think about later on, just respond to one of those emails and I promise I will get back to you, okay? But for then, bye everyone for now.